Hello students, in this video we will discuss the May 2017 OCR programming paper question number 4. In this question they are saying that a secondary school uses a database to store all requests for IT maintenance, and a database is defined as a persistent store of organized data. Now they want us to explain what is meant by the persistent store of organized data. So in this we have to explain two things. First, we have to explain what is a persistent store and what is organized data. So persistent store means that it is a non-volatile data. That means the data is stored permanently even after the power is turned off. Non-volatile or permanent data even if the power is turned off, that is persistent data or non-volatile data. Power is off, still the data is available. This is the first thing that you have to tell. If you write this bullet, you will get 1 mark. Then the second bullet will be the data is organized. That means data has a structure. Data has a structure in the form of records and fields. Data has a structure in the form of records and fields. So if you write these two bullet points, you will get full 2 marks. Now moving to the next part of the question, part B. In the part B, they have asked that a database stores information about the teachers, the hardware devices, and that each teacher has, and the requests that have been made for its maintenance. So it is talking about 3 tables. There is a table which maintains the teacher record. There is a table which maintains the record of which teacher has which hardware device, and then the third table in which what requests have been made by the teacher for the IT maintenance. So in this particular question, we are referring to the third table where we have the teacher ID, we have the hardware ID, and we have the details of the hardware, the date on which the request was made for the maintenance of the particular hardware device. So which teacher has put up on which date the request for maintenance of which hardware, that is maintained in this particular table. Now there are fields like request ID which uniquely identifies each request which has been made. Teacher ID is the person who is raising the request, and its values will be taken from the original teacher table which is defined separately. Then there is a date table column. In the date column, which date the request has been made, and then there is a hardware ID which identifies the hardware on which the request has been raised, and these are the details of that hardware. Now the first question says identify the appropriate data type for the field request ID, giving a reason for your choice. Why you are choosing a particular data type for the request ID and which data type is most suitable. So as we can see here, the request ID consists of 4 characters. Now these 3 preceding zeros are important. We cannot miss them. So we cannot use integer or float here because we want to maintain these 3 zeros, and only after the 3 zeros 1 should appear. So the char data type or the string data type is the most suitable. Character or string data type is the most suitable for the request ID. And why it is most suitable? Because we don't want to skip the preceding zeros. Don't skip the preceding zeros, which will be done in case we take a integer, and therefore we will have to take it as a string. So let us check the answer key, what is given to us. So in the answer key, when we check the answer, it is given that the data type is the text or the string, and the reason is that the leading zeros will not be treated as a number, and therefore they will be maintained in the database. Now let us look at the next part of the question paper. In the next part, they are asking, state how many records are there in the given table. So we can see here, these are the field names, these are not records, and these 4 entries over here, these are the full records. Also there are total 4 records in the table. Then in the next question, they are asking, identify the most appropriate field to be the primary key. Now the primary key in a database table is a column or a group of columns which uniquely identifies that particular row. A value which will not be repeated for any other row is considered as the primary key. So as we can see here in the table, the teacher ID can repeat, the date can repeat, the hardware ID can repeat, but the request ID is unique for all the rows, and therefore request ID is suitable to be made as the primary key. So the answers for this question, the answer is 4, and here the field is request ID. And what is the reason? It uniquely identifies each row. It is unique. That is the reason for choosing the request ID. It is uniquely identifying the each row. And you can also write down that the teacher ID will repeat, the hardware ID will repeat, but the request ID will not repeat for any of the rows, and therefore it is suitable for the primary key. Now let us look at the next part. In the next part, they have asked that the validation is a feature of DBMS that can be used to create customized data handling applications. Now what are validations? Validations are checking whether a given value is correct or not according to the requirement of the software. Like in the previous question which we have discussed the borderline cases for the algorithm, in which we have considered that the value of the number should be between 0 and 100. So if you give -1, it is out of the range, and if you give 101, it is out of the range. So validation is also like that. Validation will check whether the data is meeting the specified requirements. So what is the one validation rule that can be used for the teacher ID? So for the teacher ID, one validation is it has to be 3 characters long. So as we can see in the table, it has to be 3 characters in size. This is one validation. Another validation which is very important for teacher ID is it should be a valid teacher ID which we have to match from the original teacher table. The ID should exist in the teacher table. So it should be valid teacher ID and it should be 3 characters long. So these are the possible validations for the teacher ID. Then for the date, what are the validations? The format of the date, it should be correct, and then the date on which the entry is made, that should be correct. So it should be, date should pick the current date always. So it has to be a current date, only then whatever requests are made today, their entry should be made today itself. And in case you are making it for some previous days, then the range of dates which is allowed, that should be specified. So the format of the date is one thing. Second thing is, what is the range of dates which you will allow, for which the request will be allowed to be made. Then in the next part, they have asked us identify and describe 2 additional features of database that can be used to customize the data handling applications, and give an example of how it will be used in this particular database. So let us look at the answer. So the feature of querying the database, we should be able to query the database, and how this will be used? It can be used for searching, extracting data, finding the records which match a particular criteria. For example, all the requests which have been made on a specific date, all this can be done using the querying feature. Then another feature of the database is form for filling the information. So it is a friendly way for entering the data. And for example, whenever a new request has to be generated, instead of making an entry in the database, the form can be used to make the entry. Then report generation, like which teacher has requested for what all hardware maintenance, then on which date maximum requests have been generated. All these kind of reports can be generated using the reporting feature of the database. Then we have the security feature in the database, and it has to stop the unauthorized access or modification of the database. Example, the usernames and passwords have to be maintained. Only those users who are authorized to perform an operation, they should perform the operation on the database. So here they have asked us for multiple two features and their description and example. Each of these points carries 1 mark. So if you write one feature, description and example, another feature, description and example, you will get full 6 marks for each of them. Now let us look at the next part. Okay, this is all we have in the 4th question. So in the next video, I will be discussing the question number 5. Thank you.